Hi guys, we are here for the last installment, I think, hopefully, of our colored pencil leaves. Okay, so last time I worked on building up some of the layers, just like I did with my sphere. I worked from light to dark, okay, and I used a tan color, kind of a medium brown, and then a little bit of a darker brown to kind of build up these values in my leaf. Okay, now today I'm going to focus on building those up a little bit more, and I'm going to focus on making things more saturated. Okay, so far I have a pretty good thing going on. I have all of the placement of my lighter and darker areas according to my leaf here. Okay, and so what I want to do is I want to start kind of building up, and I'm going to go back to my lighter colors. So I'm going to be working with my lighter tan color that I have today, just to kind of start building up the saturation on it. Okay, so I'm just working here, and I'm going to work lightly to start off with, just to make sure that I'm not accidentally coloring over a spot too much, because I don't want to erase the foundation that I've already laid here. Okay, so I'm just kind of building this up here. The good thing about this is that it's kind of warming up the colors on my leaf here, because the colors that I have here are very warm looking to me. Okay, and the way that I know that they're warm is if I were to put these between the colors like yellow or red and blue, it kind of makes me think more like yellow and red, which are warmer colors. Now, if I were thinking that, it kind of makes me feel like it would fit closer to blue, or maybe there's some blue undertones in it, then that would be a cooler color. Okay, and some of the colors that I did use did have some of those cooler looks to them, right? Like this darker brown that I used. Okay, but this tan that I'm using now is much warmer, and it's helping to warm up my whole picture. Okay, so I'm just going over this and making sure to keep a good texture going. Remember, we don't want to have any regret textures. It's the worst. It's almost as bad as a regret tattoo. It's kind of hard to get rid of if you mess up, right? So I'm just going through and I'm kind of building this up through here, like so. Okay, so you can see that it's starting to get a little bit more saturated. The color is a little bit brighter than what it was. Okay, and so I'm just going to continue working through here with just this color first. So I'm going over everything with my tan, just like I did on my very first step. And I'm still using a light, maybe a medium light pressure on this, because again, I don't want to go too crazy too fast. Okay, layers and patience is our theme for this, our mantra, if you will. Okay, so I'm just building this up here, building this up a little closer in these spots. Okay, so remember when you're shading this in, or kind of like coloring it in with your colored pencils, you don't want to make huge, you don't want to move your whole hand too much, because you'll end up with a wavy look to it. You want to keep it kind of close and hover over the same spot for a little bit, so that your back and forth, I guess your pen strokes are a little bit closer together, so it looks more solid. That's how you get a more solid look and less of that textured look that we don't want for this. Okay, and I'm kind of working back and forth in different directions to help keep my texture smooth, but also to have a stronger application of color. So sometimes whenever you're using your colored pencil and you're coloring this in, if you color in one direction, it will continually miss part of the paper, or like the grain in the paper, because you're going in one direction. But if you go in the opposite direction, it helps kind of further fill that in. Okay, so I'm just working here with my tan color, And I'm just building this up a little bit at a time. Ah, that's looking so much better. I still feel like it looks a lot different on camera than it does, or at least on my computer screen than it does in person, but hopefully it'll come through for you guys. All right, so I'm feeling a lot better about this. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use this same color again, and I'm going to start adding, I'm going to start pressing just a little bit harder on the edges. So I'm just kind of using a medium pressure on the darker spots. Through here and bringing it in. Okay, this is to help saturate it. Okay, so remember, saturation means that it's a more intense color, it's a more full looking color. Okay, so I'm going to continue this around on the rest of this here, and I'll be back in just a few. Okay, so I've gone through using my lightest color, other than the yellow, my lightest brown that I've used so far. Okay, and I want to go through and use my medium and my darker color over those darker areas again, just to continue to build them up a little bit more, kind of throughout here. Just the same spaces I've had. So I'm kind of going through and building this up even more on my darker areas, because I don't want to accidentally lose them whenever I am building up my saturation. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go over this with my medium color and then my darker color that I used as well. Which I think was this one. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to build these up just a little bit more. Okay, and remember, the more you build them up, the more saturated it gets. Okay, and the whole time I'm looking at how things look in my leaf. So I'm not inventing my own coloring stuff here. I'm looking at the light and dark areas of my leaf in particular. Okay, so yours will be different from mine, most likely. You might have slightly different coloring. The veins might be different. The darker and lighter areas might be different. Okay, that's the nice thing about this project, is that everybody's leaves have kind of their own individual look to them. Okay, so I'm just going through and darkening these up just a little bit more. Again, I'm not pressing crazy hard, right? I'm just kind of going with a medium, maybe a medium hard pressure if it seems like that's appropriate. Okay, but I'm just kind of building it up here with my darkest color now. Okay, so I'm working these guys through. Okay, because remember, we talked about our edges being a lot darker. And I think maybe that's just kind of how leaves generally tend to start changing color and dying out a little bit. Okay, so I've gone through with my darkest color again. I'm going to go back in with my medium color and my light color to build up these areas. So I'm pressing down using a kind of a medium to medium hard pressure. In the areas of my leaf that I know that are lighter, I'm going to use a lighter pressure just because I don't want to build it up too much too fast. Okay, so I'm kind of going over these with my medium color here. To really darken up my darker areas. Okay. So I'm going through this the whole time, just adding more and more layers and a little bit more pressure each time. Okay. I also want to make sure that while I'm working on this, my edges are nicely defined. So I'm coloring right up next to where the edge of my leaf is and making sure my color is nice and saturated right up there too. I don't want it to be super fuzzy on the edges. So I'm kind of outlining with the pointier side, not pressing too hard. And that way I can color in right up next to it. Like that. Okay, and then I can go through and kind of blend this down a little bit so it's not as liney. Okay, I just know that the edge of my leaf is a little bit darker than the rest of it. Okay, so I'm building this through here. I'm building this up a little bit at a time. Okay, so I don't want to rush in this part. I'm going to be very, very, very careful because remember, if you make an oops with the colored pencil, it's kind of hard to get rid of that line. You might be able to lighten it, but it's hard to get it to go totally away. Okay, so I'm just getting right up close here and then kind of filling in the space so I don't have a super fuzzy line. Okay, so I'm going to focus on the edge and I'm going to work on building up the edges again with my darker colors just because that's how my leaf is. Okay, yours might be kind of the opposite. Sometimes they are lighter on the edges and darker in the middle. Okay, but I'm building this up where my darkest spots are. So I'm going to finish doing the outline and I'll be back. Okay, so I'm still working on the edges, but I did want to show you how this little part here is really starting to come together. Okay, so I'm building it up. Okay, you can still see light and dark areas. The edges are nice and smooth. Okay, and I'm building up that saturation. I'm not fully there yet, but I'm probably like 75%. I'm just going to keep layering it up, and the rest of this is going to look like that one right there. Okay, another quick part here. I'm working on this stem. I want to make sure that it's thick enough that it looks like a stem and not just a singular line. I've sharpened my pencil so I can make sure I'm getting as fine of a line as possible. Okay, and I'm kind of going through, I'm looking at the general shape of the stem, and my particular stem actually also has areas of light and dark. So the end of the stem is much darker than the rest of that there. So I can go in with my darker brown and kind of shade this in a little bit here, just like it is there. Okay, and then I will go in and add in some yellow to kind of lighten it up just a little bit to make it look more like my stem is in real life, right? And again, I'm using very pointed colored pencils for this section just to make sure that I'm keeping a nice straight line. Okay, and it doesn't accidentally get too fuzzy. Okay. And I'm going to kind of turn this a little bit here. There we go. Okay, and then, so just to show you again, guys, on this part, what I'm doing is I'm making sure that my edges are nice and solid. I'm not pressing super hard. It looks a lot darker just because this is very pointed. I am using kind of a medium to medium light pressure. I just want to make sure that I'm getting really close to the edge. So it's kind of like an outline like this, because I don't want this fuzzy business here. Okay, so I'm just defining the edges like this, and then I go back in, kind of using a medium pressure, and I just blend it into the rest of this so that it's less liney and it's more of a natural transition of light and dark. Okay, so I kind of just build it up like this. And then I blend it out. So do you see how that looks less like a line? It's just more of a kind of defined area. Same thing here. Just kind of blend this out. Right, so sometimes I work side to side, sometimes I kind of go up and down, have a little bit of rounded thing, like a rounded motion. And this is just to make sure that I don't have a super liney looking leaf. Okay, and I just bring it up just like that. Okay, so that's what you're supposed to be doing on yours. Okay, so I've gone around, I've darkened up all of the edges using my medium color, my middle color that I used. Okay, and I feel pretty good about this. I still have my areas that are a little bit darker, those kind of natural variations in the leaves. I might darken these up just a little bit more. Okay, but the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to be using this golden yellow color, and then my first color that I used, that was tan. Okay, and so first I'm going to go over it with my yellow. I'm not going to go super crazy because remember, yellow doesn't like to play well with others because it's just so gosh darn waxy. Okay, but I'm going to start kind of coloring in through here. And do you guys see how it's really, I don't know if you can see that on the camera. Let's get in closer. See if you can see how it's really kind of like warming up this area here. It's not like, bam, I'm yellow, but it's adding a little bit of warmth and kind of a golden undertone to it. And again, I'm not pressing super hard because I do want to layer a little bit more on top of this. I'm just using kind of like a medium pressure, but I'm working my yellow all the way through here. Okay, and I actually might use my yellow towards the end to help make things further saturated, because it's really just kind of brightens things up. Even though it's not screaming, hey, I'm yellow. It does warm it up, it brightens it up. And the same thing can happen like if you have red on yours, it might not look blatantly red, but the red might make things look a little bit warmer, just depending upon what color you're using. Okay, so I'm kind of using the yellow. Again, it is having a subtle effect, but it's having the effect that I want. It's nice, it's kind of warm, like this one is here. Okay, this one has a lot of like sorry, you can't even see. This has a lot of warm undertones to it. And so I want to make sure that I have that on my rendition of the leaf. Okay. And actually, honestly, I don't even know if I'm going to go back in with this tan. I think I'm just going to stick with this gold. Okay, so I'm going to work medium first, and then I'm going to build it up a little bit. And again, I'm going all the way to my darkest parts too. So even though you won't be able to see it too much, it does make it look like it belongs together, and it's helping me build up my saturation. Okay. A lot of your leaves probably have some yellow in it, and that yellow does a really good job of building up the saturation, kind of like how we used the white colored pencil on our colored pencil sphere. Okay, so I'm just kind of coloring in here for all parts, and it's really, really just adding to my drawing here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add in yellow for this whole thing. And again, I'm kind of working my way back and forth to help fill in any white spaces of my paper still coming through, because paper's like that sometimes. Okay, so I'm just kind of building this up through here. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this was definitely the best choice. And I'm using a golden yellow because I have one and because it's a little bit warmer and closer to the leaf color than just a plain yellow. But if you have a plain yellow, chances are it will give you the same effect because it's still warm, it's still brighter, and so it'll give you a little bit more of what you're looking for. Okay, so I have this side almost done. and then we'll compare sides. Okay, and I know it kind of looks like I'm coloring in aimlessly, but I promise I really am trying to color in a way that doesn't create a weird texture and that I'm covering everything the way that I need to. Because remember, if you go back and forth, you're more likely to have a fuller color that way. Okay, so if we pull this back, do you guys see the difference between the leaves? So I added the yellow on just the right side here, not the left side yet. Can you see how warm it looks? Okay, so the yellow is the winner right here. The yellow is really, really making the difference. Okay, so I want you to look at your leaf and see if there's a color that would help make the difference for you. Is it yellow? Do you need to add in more red or more of an orange color throughout? You might want to look into that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish up yellow on this side here, and then I think I might be done. And then we'll talk about the shadow. Okay, guys, so we are on to our final step, which is adding in our shadows. Okay, so I have my shadows sketched out. I think you can see them kind of a little bit. They're barely there. And to be honest, in real life, they are also just barely there. One of the things that I want to explain to you is that I want you to just use any gray that you have that's not a regular pencil. So please don't use your regular drawing pencil. I want you to use a colored pencil because again, they're made up of different things. Okay. So it doesn't matter if you have like this one here I have is a cool gray. You might have just one that's gray or a warm gray or something like that. If you don't have that, you can go in with a black and a white. Okay. If you are using black and white, you're going to use the black as lightly as possible, and the white is what's going to help you kind of saturate. Okay, but I'm going to go in with my gray colored pencil here. And what I want to do is the same thing that I've been working on this whole entire time is just slowly building up my color layers. Okay, so I'm coming in close to my leaf here, and I'm shading in where my shadow is at. Okay, so remember, we don't want to go super crazy in the very beginning because we want to make sure that we have the right kind of light and dark areas of our shadows, right? Because sometimes our shadows are darker in some spots and lighter in some spots. Okay, so I'm kind of building this in here, just like this. Okay, and it looks to me that it's a little bit darker up here. So I'm gonna press just a little bit harder with my gray. Okay, now if you are using gray and you're like, oh, this is the right color, then you can go ahead and kind of go over it just with a really light layer. And then you can go over it with your white colored pencil. Right? Sometimes we need to go in with a little bit of the black there to kind of help with the shadow out a little bit. Kind of like that. Okay, so it's a little bit darker and then a little bit lighter down here. And then I can go over it using my white oil, or sorry, I don't know where oil pastel came from. My white colored pencil. Okay. And so I'm just going to go through here and kind of help blend it out. Although the white doesn't do too much blending, but it helps smooth it out by helping things look waxier. Okay, so I'm kind of going through and blending this here. Okay. So I have my first shadow done. Okay, and if it makes sense to you to work with like lights, like do all of them like one layer and then go over it and go over it, you can do that. Or if you want to go piece by piece like we just did, you can also do that. All right. There we go. Now, I kind of feel like I'm going to darken it just a tiny bit here. And I'm just pressing so lightly using my black colored pencil. Yeah, I think that's better. Okay, now on this next one, over here, I'm going to show you kind of what it looks like to just use black and white, okay, if that's the situation that you're working with. Okay, so for me, on this side here, I have this darker area down here, and then it's lighter here. Okay, so let me look at my shadow. Okay, so I'm just very lightly coming in here with my shadow in this area. Okay, and I think that there's a little space here. It's kind of hard to tell because the lighting's a little bit different. Okay, but I'm pressing just very lightly with my black colored pencil. Like, I mean, I'm just barely touching my paper here. Just like this. Okay, and this kind of comes out here. Okay, so remember, it's important to have your leaf on a white piece of paper because these shadows are going to be a lot easier for you to put in here. Okay, and I think that this actually kind of comes up here a little bit more. I think it's a little darker here. Okay, so I'm adding in the darker part, pressing down just a tiny bit harder, just literally a tiny bit. To get the darkest part of the shadow. Okay, and then this part, here, and then it's much lighter here. Okay, and then I'm going to take my white colored pencil and I'm going to just go over that. And it's going to help to kind of smooth out the texture a little bit because we're adding another layer of colored pencil on top of it, even if it's just it's not actually adding color. We're still adding a layer itself. Okay, and it helps blend that out. So if you only have black and white at home, then you can use this method. All right, almost there. I'm going to go up and down just a little bit to kind of help with this texture. Okay, so then I have my next shadow done. Okay, so you're going to continue all the way around doing all of the shadows that you see for your leaf. And once you're finished, you're going to take a picture of it and turn it in on Canvas. Okay, please make sure that if it's possible, I would use a phone or an iPad just because you can get a better, more close-up picture of your drawing. Okay, so I hope that you had fun doing this. I loved this one. I really am happy with how my leaf turned out. And I can't wait to see how yours look.